Hi there, everyone. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on CFL Talk, joining me is David Morassutti, the star of our show. David, how's it going?
I'm digging the new look for the show. It's first and foremost, it's a little new intro, new background. Liking it. Good job with the production on that one, whoever was with it.
That's all Eduardo. And sorry, Rebecca.
You have to make sure the right people get the right.
And I'm sure they wouldn't be doing any of it if they didn't ask Janet first.
I'm very sure. Yeah.
Did I get everybody in? Did I miss anyone? No.
Well, you'll find out if they kick you out of the show.
There you go. Well, every week there's a headline, and really, in my opinion, there's two headlines. But the headline above all headlines, of course, takes place in Ottawa, where the GM, whom we've called into question all season and even last season, and we discussed it before the show that everybody saw this coming. It was a train that left the station a while ago.
Well, yeah, it seemed like things were slowly building up to this point. And so to hear that, that they're firing their general manager after, I think the team has been, it probably should have come a little bit sooner, but you always try to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, the person that's been there since the team has been there, the first guy. You always try to give him every opportunity to, fix what is going on. And there was just no, I think when you realize that someone is just kind of stuck in their own thought of how things are done, people up above then have to make the decision of whether that's the right path for the team to go.
It's no coincidence at all that he gets fired as soon as the team is eliminated from the playoffs. I don't think there's a coincidence there.
It's a lot easier to sell that decision when something like that happens, that's for sure. Like, you're not going to fire him after team, has a pretty good stretch or wins a game or wins a couple of games. You're going to wait for that. All right, team is out of the playoffs. We have to rethink how we're going to do this going forward. And I think they're clearly deciding that this is the proper way to go.
And also, it pretty much heads the media, off at the pass because, quite frankly, David, we'd be asking those questions, and so would every other reporter. Okay, now that you haven't made the playoffs, any decision on what you're going to do with the team in the big picture, right? Ownership will be brought in, everybody's who's involved, and now those questions now start a new question, and that is, now that the Marcel Desjardins era is over, what does this organization see as the next steps? Now, the talk is that they're going to, they're going to advance somebody from within, and I guess he'll be asked the questions of, what are you going to do next? How prepared was he for this position? Has he even given any consideration to a plan? Have there been meetings to discuss with the coaching staff and everybody? I assume if it didn't happen before, it definitely happens after the release of Desjardins.
Yeah, like, you have to think that if we have seen this coming for a little bit, that the organization had been slowly working their way to this point. And if I'm the person in charge right now, the interim general manager who was promoted from the assistant general manager, and now his assistant is being promoted up to, like, this is something that you kind of thought was, I mean, sometimes teams just, ownership and people who are making decisions, they kind of make these decisions and they tell the person, all right, this is what we want. Like, this is where we want you to go. It could be like that too, because you don't want to, if you're making a decision like this, you don't want it to get out in a certain way. So maybe you try to protect that in some ways. But I think you have to, if a lot of people are expecting this to happen, and I mean, how many of us are really surprised to see this happen? You have to think that those who are working there also saw this coming too. So they have to have some, you know, some idea of what they need to do to prepare for it.
Absolutely. And this completes the disillusion of the team that brought the, the Grey Cup to Ottawa. Campbell is gone now, and now joining him is Desjardins. They were the two main characters in who built this team. Desjardins, the first employee, and of course Campbell soon after. And in 2016, they won a championship, and they've been to the Grey Cup and not won. They had a lot of early success, which we all talked about. Amazing, amazing. Here's a franchise, rookie franchise. In their first year, they look terrible. The next year, amazing stuff starts to happen. But now they're kind of now starting over. La Police is in his first year. He's a head coach with credibility. Not only is he credible as a coach, offensive coordinator, he's also credible in the CFL world. But I think the credibility of the Ottawa Redblacks right now, David, has to be, is it credible in the eyes of the fans? Now, we haven't seen the fan base totally abandon the team. So the motivation to dump Desjardins isn't because all the fans were leaving, but it is because too many of the fans had lost faith in the Ottawa Redblacks that was earned early.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when you're like, here's the thing. I think I'm gonna compare Toronto here. I think Toronto and Ottawa are fairly similar in that these are teams that have gone to Grey Cups. Teams that have, Ottawa has won a Grey Cup in a short, 3 out of 4 years. They were in the Grey Cup, but they also have a losing record under Desjardins' tenure, right? There hasn't been that long-term track of sustainable, consistent winning, and it's really hard for a franchise to really sell that to the fans because the fans don't really know what they're going to get. And I think if you're Ottawa right now and you're seeing how other teams are making choices in order to build a long-term culture and future and don't think that that was really something Desjardins was working towards, you have to think about what's the best way to make that move. And I think about when Trevor Harris left for Edmonton, there wasn't a backup plan to that. There wasn't somebody in the wings ready to go. That's a lot of teams have really put themselves in tough situations for not preparing for the worst. And that's on the general manager. That's on the people that are in the position of management to say, all right, we have to really think about what the future could look like without this person here. And a lot of teams, I think more so a lot of general managers are starting to lose out because they are not preparing themselves for these situations.
You're right. Since Trevor Harris left, but even before him, we were struggling with his name. The person that we were talking about, I'm of the opinion the moment Jeff Hunt left, who was part of the ownership group, I was of the opinion that this team is losing somebody very credible, much like, as per our discussion that I referred to, Ted Lywicki, who with the Maple Leafs, he really enhanced the credibility of MLSC and that organization. Jeff Hunt, in a similar way, soon after and around the same time, did the same thing with the Ottawa Redblacks. Not just because he was a football guy. He loved football. Football was something he liked and loved and enjoyed. But what he also had was he had the business acumen to bring together, the business side of the team to ensure that they had the support and the economic as much that's tied to fans that it would take to be a team that, down the road is always competitive. He left, and sometimes I always wonder when it comes to organizations, we seem to gravitate to blaming the players first and for a long time, and then eventually the general manager. But we always forget why the general manager and the players are in their position. They're not in their position because they volunteered, walked up to the door, opened the door, walked in, and took over. Somebody had to undersign their existence. And I think Jeff Hunt was one of those guys with a lot of sports experience. And I think once he left, they lost a bit of that sports touch, that sports feeling. Organizations, it's very important to have a business side, but also, as we discussed off the air, an understanding of sport as well.
Yeah, there's certain executives are good for certain positions, right? If you're looking for someone to market and put the team in a good side businessly, on a business sense, uh, that's their specialty. But not every there's a lot of owners that think that they can own a professional sports franchise because they do well with their own businesses. It's not the same. That symmetry isn't always there. You need to have somebody that truly understands the sports culture and what it takes to, you know, sell your team to the fan base and make sure the fan base believes in what your direction is. Having the right people in charge to run your operations, not just with your general managers, but your coaching staff, your scouting staff, your trainers, your equipment managers. There's a lot that goes around to it. And some people think that they know it better than others. And some people, it gets to the point where their belief in what they think is right ends up being their downfall in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you do. The test of that is a team success over the long haul. Ownership has, in my opinion, ownership. If a team doesn't do well for 10 years, it's not the GM, it's not the coach, it's not the players. If a team doesn't do well for 2-3 years, it's not necessarily the coach, it's probably the GM. Now, if a team plays terrible and the players are no good, it's still not up to the players. I've always been one of those people that finds it very difficult to blame the players because they're not where they are if it isn't for somebody bringing them in, right? So that's my theory in sports. It really is credibility, intelligence, success. It all goes downhill. It all starts at the top. I believe that, and mostly because with the Ottawa Red Blacks, Jeff Hunt left, Brock Sunderland left, and now Campbell left, and now Desjardins is gone. So now the old guard is completely gone. Like the people that came into this thing day one are all gone. This is a new beginning. So for me, I really think that ownership needs to find an upper management person who understands the game of football and has been in the position of VP, something like that, which is why in our conversation, now you know where I'm going with this. That's why in our conversation, I said to you, who's going to be a good fit at the end of this season for the Ottawa Red Blacks? It is going to be Chris Jones. And I think he's the early favorite to take over.
So, and the one thing I also thought about, we talk about timing.
Yes.
You get the guy, well, you try to make these decisions because you want to get ahead of another team. And that other team right now that a lot of people probably point to is Edmonton.
Right.
A team that's going through a very similar stage right now. So if you're Ottawa, you've already got a head start on what a lot of other teams might be trying to do right now. And right now, yes, Chris Jones is working for the Argos. He is not guaranteed to be back next year. There is an option for him to come back, and I believe that option is all depending on whether or not Glenn Young will be allowed to return. Because right now he's on leave because of from what we've been told, is because of the vaccine mandate in MLSE. So unless that changes in some regard, Glenn Young, that position could still be open. But if you're Chris Jones right now, you're putting yourself where
he's writing his own ticket when this
he's
season ends.
writing his own
Because
ticket,
you're right.
right? So he could say, you know what, thank you, Toronto. I appreciate you letting me get back to the CFL, but I'm deciding to go and take my talents over to Ottawa because I will get a better opportunity there. And it all comes down to the GM role's open, but what else
Yes,
I
and
mean,
we
look,
know how much he loves those labels.
yeah,
Right? He left Edmonton. He was everybody except the chief bottle washer. I mean, he was everything at that franchise. He was, he basically wrote his own ticket. He had every position that he wanted, and he can replicate that in Ottawa. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that they lack the leadership above Desjardins, because Desjardins was not held, his hands were not held to the fire. There were, in the past 2-3 years, and you can ask red black fans that understand the game of football, red black fans that understand that there's more than just the players, that they'll tell you that Desjardins appeared to be sitting on his hands for too long. Is it because he didn't know where to put his hands? He didn't know what to do? Is it because he couldn't do what he needed to do because he didn't have the support above him to do it? Or just plain simply, he didn't know what to do and he was basically vapor locked? It doesn't matter why to me, David, but what matters to me is that in sports, and CFL especially, because there's no excuse in the CFL to be able to change course. We discussed also off the air how deeply you can change course in a season as a Canadian Football League team, how quickly you can do an about face.
yeah. I mean, look, Toronto, they went from a team that had an abysmal record to a team that went and won the Grey Cup. Is that a something you want to be doing? No, but it shows that in the CFL, you can have a blank canvas to work with, because contracts are easily movable in many ways because of
And
language.
removable.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're Ottawa, you can actually turn this around the right way. It just depends on how do you want to do it. Do you want to do the quick fix? Do you want to bring in a bunch of veterans and a bunch of guys who are, not going to be there for a long time? Or do you want to build it up slowly and build it up, or the right way? Some teams are trying the hybrid. I clearly think that like the Argos, when they brought in Pinball and John Murphy, they're doing this in a hybrid way where they're bringing in veterans that can compete now, but they're also teaching a young group of guys and leaving themselves a little bit of a longer window than just bringing in. I like when I think about the 2017 Argos, there were a lot of guys who were, kind of near the not the end of their careers, but they were like right at that point where, Ricky Ray was older, and a lot of those guys were, this was championship or bust for this team, pretty much.
Yeah, I think you're right, and also I'd like to add that the reason sometimes teams bring in veterans is because they need a culture change, and it's easier to change the culture if you bring in the culture, into the locker room as opposed to try and teach it immediately. And I think your words are perfect in suggesting that there's a transition that with pinball that they're having. You talked off the air. I know we did a lot of talking off the air. We should save it for the show. But anyway, when you talked about, the previous Grey Cup winning 2017 team that came in with a GM of experience, a coach of experience, one that, the Argos won a Grey Cup with, a GM that won lots of Grey Cups. They did it from a management perspective. There's that too, right? And I think that'll be more of the way that Ottawa will do it. I think if they bring in Chris Jones, all those questions you asked, they will be answered by him. And if you're the ownership in Ottawa, there's nothing you want more than to make sure that it's not your decisions that are handcuffing the team. Rather, the decisions by someone who knows how to win ensures that the team isn't handcuffed or isn't taking the wrong step. So I think it's important, and I believe in Edmonton, considering, and you're right about bringing in Edmonton to this, because if you're Edmonton, even if you're the fan, never mind the organization, if you're the fan and the organization, you're saying to yourself, well, that so and so left our team the way he did, that dirty so and so. I'll never have anything that he won the Grey Cup, right? Yeah, you know what? Maybe we'll give him a chance.
And we've seen guys go back to the organization where they started. I look at Coach Rich Stubler. He's been around almost every team in the CFL,
Absolutely.
multiple turns. You know, it's all dependent on the vision of who's running everything, right? If Chris Jones really wasn't running as much in Edmonton, and that's why he went to Saskatchewan,
Right.
right? So like that's where I feel like, if you're a team right now that's going to bring in a Chris Jones, you're doing it because he's going to do things his way and you believe in the way he's going to do it. Yeah, is there going to be some ill, thoughts about how things left? Yeah, I can get that. But you're also trying to understand why you're bringing him in and what's the goal. If it's about, are we going to really bring feelings into making the team better? That's why fans don't make those decisions. That's why it's the ownership's decision. That's why you need an owner who's going to be level headed about this and saying, okay, we think that this is the right person to get us back on track.
Allow me to dive even deeper, David. Let's look at Ottawa. Let's think about Ottawa, the status that they're in. Successful team all of a sudden on hard times. Sound familiar? Edmonton. They recently won. They won the Grey Cup in 2015, wasn't it? I think in 2015 they won the Grey Cup, right?
15.
And then they fall on hard times. They both needed the same thing, somebody to rebuild. Well, what did Chris Jones do when he left Ottawa? He went to Saskatchewan. What was the situation in Saskatchewan? They were in deep trouble. They were not playing well. They missed the playoffs. The fans were irate. The coach was, oh my goodness, raked over the coals. This was a team in disarray. Sounds like Ottawa. So Chris Jones, part of the sales pitch for Chris Jones with both Edmonton and Ottawa is he has inherited a team that needs a lot of change and a lot of work. He has not only experience in winning, he has experience in rebuilding. And doing it, I think it's fair to say that he did it fairly quickly in Saskatchewan, definitely did it quickly in Edmonton. So why wouldn't Ottawa and Edmonton now ask themselves, well, geez, we know this guy can do it. We're crazy not to get him. There's only one tiny little drawback that I'm going to throw a little fly in the ointment. There's a management cap now. So Chris Jones cannot hold out for as much as maybe he would if there wasn't one.
No, I think that's fair. I said the coach. I understand why the coaching cap is there. I understand the reasons for it, but it's not the CFL's money that's being used for this. It's the ownership's money. It's the team. So if the team wants to waste as much money as they want on coaches and all that stuff, let them.
Hey,
I understand.
I'm sorry. You know what? I'm going to interrupt only for this reason. Does a vice president's salary come under the management cap?
I believe it's front office. So I believe that if it's general manager, because that's why pinball
Is
is
it general manager down or is it vice president down? Is it president down? I'm not sure. We should find that out because that would make a difference, David.
I'm pretty
I'm sorry
sure.
to have interrupted you,
No,
but
no, I'm pretty sure
that's
you're
why.
right. No, that's a good point because if you're looking at this, is Bill Manning a part of the CFL cap? I don't think so because that's I think separate because they're not directly involved with team
Yes, that
decisions.
sounds good. I like that. I think that sounds
So
familiar.
if because I don't think that Bill Manning's salary would because how do you divide that, right? He's working for TFC and for the Argos. So I don't know how the CFL would differentiate how much he's making there. Because in the CFL, coaches, general managers, scouts, all those people are registered contracts with the CFL. So I think that's where a president would be a little bit different. But if you're Chris Jones, I mean, I think the CFL will say, well, if this guy's going to wear many hats, you're going to have to decide which hat he's going to wear and what he's doing. Because then, yeah, how many teams are going to say, oh, we're just going to make this guy the president and pay him whatever and try to get around the management cap. I think that well, I mean, you hope the CFL has some sort of idea will work.
I'm actually trying to look at that. What is the average salary? When I found it, it seemed a little better. I'm trying to get that information from CFLDB. And I got the full cap here, so it's 5.8 million for the 2021 season. The average salary of starting players. I don't see. In the headline it said management cap. Maybe I have to go down further. Maximum salary. Here.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I would think that because everyone was wondering why wasn't Pinball made the president of the Argos. Well, first off, because Bill Manning is
They have one.
They have one, and secondly, I think it's because he's technically working with directly with team personnel decisions, and that's a general manager. That's not really a president. The president is overseeing club things, like right now Bill Manning is overseeing everything that's happening with the Argos at BMO Field and all those things. So that's how I would see it. So if any team's going to bring in Chris Jones, they're bringing him in as a general manager and not as a president. They're bringing him on as a potentially, like they're not going to say he's the president of player personnel. I don't think they're going to of team operations. I don't even think Chris Jones would want that role. He would want full roster control and in that regard.
And here are the penalties that if you exceed the salary cap: $1 for each dollar a club exceeds the salary cap up to $100,000. $2 for each dollar a club exceeds the cap from 100,000 and 300,000. $3 for each dollar a club exceeds over 300,000. So I'm looking here, and they keep referring to management, but they don't. They're not very clear. But if I remember now, I got to rely on my memory. I don't like it sometimes, but I'll do it this time. What you said was there's a definition of being part of team management. In other words, running the team, working with the team. There are actually people who look like they work for the team, like doctors and other such people, or consultants. And consultants aren't under the salary cap, but a consultant, there's a definition of what a consultant is, because there have been some questions about some coaches that were referred to as outside the salary cap because of they were defining the function of their function a certain way, but then it became clear, CFL clarity, that they said no, they're actually working with the players. So there's that distinction. And my memory is, I'm sorry if it's a little foggy. The point being, though, is there a way to give a guy like Chris Jones, who'll ask for whatever, money that isn't part of the management cap? That's a good question. That's one I can't answer right now. I'm sorry. I wish I could have. I've tried. I can't. Maybe later, just like the Jeff Hunt name that came up through a little bit of research before the show. This is going to require a little research while we're not on the show. But essentially, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a really good general manager, a guy who had the ability previously on more than one occasion, that being Chris Jones, to rebuild teams at a rapid rate. One that you said, and I agree with you, can be done in the CFL.
And that's the thing, right? There are certain restrictions in that regard, but as I kind of mentioned earlier, that there's a lot of flexibility that CFL GMs and management have to try to turn things around quickly. The other issue you have is finding, how many guys can you recruit to go and play in Ottawa? To say a team that's only got 2 wins this season, how do you convince those players that this is the situation that they should go to? Part of it's going to be money. Part of it's going to be opportunity to maybe, you take that 1 year and you go somewhere else. So that's I think the biggest question right now that anyone.
There's one more. Pinball gets a lot of credit for the players that come in. There's also that attraction that you're referring to. That's another reason why players go to a team. Management can help make that decision easy for them.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people can say no to pinball.
Or
Uh,
not trust pinball, because essentially what we're talking about here, when it comes to sports and when it comes to changing a team, when you have the option to go to any team, one of the deciding factors is always money. We all agree on that. But because of the cap and because of the limited amount of money that can be thrown at players, I think that raises the specter of how much you trust the people you're working for or will be working for.
yeah, no, that's for sure. And I think certain guys, it's a reputation, right? Why does Calgary get a lot of guys, or why are they able to recruit free agents?
Exactly.
Because they've done it. They've been a proven team for how many years, and I guarantee a lot of players that play there will give that organization raving reviews.
And they
Just go
should.
on, right? So I think,
Yeah.
and the situations are, and it's also the family situations. Does this work for the family?
Yep.
Does this is this
We've
the right?
talked about the hometown discount, the hometown desire to go home and not have to worry about just real quick, a place to live costs money with how much the salary is in the Canadian Football League. Residential expenses can bite away at a salary.
Yeah, and teams are able to give part of part of the contract they're able to give to help with the living costs. I know that that's a thing in the CFL. So certain teams can help with that, and other teams they may struggle with that. So those are things that always come in those discussions with players.
So my money's on a real battle between who gets Jones. In conclusion for this topic, there's going to be. You're right. You raised it. I can't agree with it more. The battle's going to be between Edmonton and Ottawa for Jones's services. I think we both can walk away from this segment suggesting that Chris Jones will be a general manager somewhere next year.
He will be a high ranking, even if it's not general manager. He will be leading in a CFL team because
At
it's clear
yeah.
that's what he
At
wants
the
to do.
very least, a head coach. At the very least. But wherever he goes, you know that he's going to want more, and it's going to be hard to say no to him. It's going to be hard to say no to him. As I said, he comes with the qualifications that both those teams, Ottawa and Edmonton, want and need, and that is credibility and trust in the ability to change their fortunes.
Yeah, no, you have to think long term with these decisions. You may want to keep the guy you've had for around for a while, but you have to wonder, is this your guy really going forward? And I think Ottawa made the right call here. Sure, maybe Marcel could turn things around for next year, but can he keep it going for longer? They gave him enough chances. He's been
They
there
did.
since 2013. He's been there for quite a long time. A lot longer than a lot of CFL people right now. There's only
Yeah.
I can only think of one person in the CFL right now that's held his job longer, and that's the guy out in Calgary, in John Huffman.
Yeah. And they've been falling. They've been Ottawa's not been a very good team for too
No,
long.
exactly.
And patience in the Canadian Football League for failure by virtue of how quickly things can change. That temptation, as you said, that creates an opportunity for an owner to say, you know what, it can be put back together pretty quick, so we might as well make the move. If this guy can't do it, because we know it can be done quickly, and if he can't do it, after a couple of years, maybe he just can't. I don't know how well, what other opinions I can give, but I think the most important thing is that winning is everything to organizations. They may soft pedal it sometimes. Even the media will soft pedal it. Oh well, Toronto doesn't have fans because the team there's nobody wants to go there. Winning can make a difference. It wins over the media. It gets people off your back, and the fans enjoy the experience because that's what you want in the Canadian Football League. You want people to come to the game. That's what you need. You need attendance. Attendance brings beers, food and parking and all the things, the ancillary things as well, not just, the TV revenue, because we know anybody who's followed the CFL for any amount of time knows that the TV revenue is great for making the team have an opportunity to be in the black. but profit relies on turnstile activity.
Yeah, no, and I always think that if you're kind of already deciding to make a move like this, if you're already thinking it, it's most likely the right decision.
Absolutely. I'll leave the last word with you. Let's go to the games that were played last week. And the first one took place in Montreal. It was a battle to help, we fans, reporters, get a sense of what kind of battle we're going to have for first place. At the beginning of the season, Hamilton was the team to beat. Toronto did a couple of times, which is unusual for them, in Hamilton too. So now they find themselves going to Montreal with a 1-game lead over the Montreal Alouettes. And let's just say all four wheels came off the Argonaut game in that game.
This was a game where Montreal took advantage of, I think, two things. One, the Argos offensive line was brutal. They like McLeod. I felt you feel for McLeod Bethel Thompson when he goes through. He's hit so many times, rushed so many times to make a decision. I don't know many quarterbacks are going to be able to handle when your offensive line is playing like that. And two, Montreal, I think, saw a little bit of vulnerability in the Argos secondary where miscommunication, a new defensive coordinator still trying to leave his mark on the team, and those deep shots. One, I think, should have been called back for that penalty.
Yeah.
Was not seen by either.
Key touchdown at a key time in the game. Could have made a difference.
Could have made a difference. And, maybe the coach doesn't see it, but I think, how does the CFL not, when they review scores?
I don't understand how that doesn't fall into the reviewable.
I don't either, because you think that if a guy, you're reviewing whether a guy got in for a touchdown or something, you think, well, this guy actually, he didn't, the way he scored that touchdown wasn't legal. How
if that is an offensive interference, throwing a guy to the ground
by his box.
And listen, I want to make this clear. We cover the Argos. I don't want this to sound
no.
I don't want this to sound like some sort of we're making excuses for the Argos. No. What we are this is just this one little point where if there's pass interference and a touchdown is scored, or there's pass interference and a touchdown could have been scored, I'm under the understanding that it's reviewed.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
It didn't in this case.
And even the Argos missed that. Like, whoever is reviewing the video for that probably should have signaled that down to the coach to challenge it. He didn't get a good look at it, so they have to live with those decisions, and
it's a difference maker.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it wasn't just the players that let the team down. Management dropped the ball there too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in this one, Montreal, William Stanback did exactly what he's been doing all year and took it even further with the 200.
Yes, he did. Gained the most yards that he's ever gained in a game.
And in times where the Argos may have had an opportunity to make it close, he's like, I'm not giving you the ball back, which is exactly what you want your running back to do. That's why you can control the game a lot more when you have a running game, and you can extend drives a little bit longer because you're not forced to throw it too much. And that not only does that stop the clock, but it shortens your you miss 2 plays with the throwing the ball, and you're not able to move the ball forward. You're giving the ball right back. That's how defenses try to get teams back in the game, by forcing a 2 and out. And Montreal, to their credit, I think similar to what they did when they played Toronto earlier, which was, we're going to try to keep the ball, so we're not going to give this offense that much time to get back into it.
Yeah, you're right. And the other thing is, really, for me, there's two things that Montreal's defense benefited from: the run game, right?
Yeah,
and poor field position for the Argos. In other words, good field position for them. The offensive line for the Argos was so poor. If you don't realize it, and if you haven't watched Macbeth at quarterback, he does not run. You almost have to chase him out of the pocket and tell him you're coming for him to actually run out of the pocket. He's a pocket passer. And there were 2-3 times where he was running for his life. And when I say running for his life, he got popped a few times in that game, blindsided. I mean, everything that says an offensive line isn't working happened. And then what we have to understand is you have to accept the fact that that also means that the quarterback is not making passes with a reasonable amount of authority. you know,
And it affects his confidence and timing in the pocket.
absolutely, absolutely. And it can hurt and you can start developing a few little pains. And also, the paranoia of what's going on around you. All that stuff, it's all about emotion, it's all about confidence, and it's all about that he was let down. And Coach Dinwiddie, one thing I have to say about Coach Dinwiddie, he's not afraid to tell the truth, and he spares no quarter. That's an admirable trait for him. He said immediately when asked, remember at the press conference, so why wasn't I think it was you that asked the question, why didn't you make the call on the touchdown? The touchdown, I think is the way you put it.
Yeah.
And he answered honestly. He says, "Well, I didn't see it in time."
Yeah. Then I think that's an admirable trait, and maybe that's probably why, that's why the Argos liked him when they first looked at him. He's not gonna tiptoe around a situation. Sure, once in a while you have to understand when it's right to be truthful or not. But when your team has a performance like that, you can't tiptoe around it. It was a big game that they should have won or needed to win because based on
Right.
the situation, and they didn't. And there's really not a good way to tiptoe around it. And I'm glad that he didn't because it keeps the players accountable too.
Yeah, it was a statement game, self-described by the coach of the Montreal Alouettes. And it could have been a statement game on behalf of the Toronto Argonauts. It was not, and it wasn't even an argument. It was really a walk. It was a walk off. It was not a very good game for the Argos. But again, it's one game. The key to success is not whether you win or lose. It's how you keep winning or how you change from losing to winning. It's what you do to win the next game. Whether you won the last game or not shouldn't be the focus. The focus should be on the next game. As soon as you start thinking about the last game, whether you win or lose, you're not concentrating on the next game. So that's going to be the biggest challenge, in my opinion, for the Toronto Argonauts moving forward.
Yeah. Frank, I'm going to be right back. I'll let you talk about the next game. I have to take a quick bathroom break. I've been
Oh, okay. Too much information, but I'll accept the information. All right. So talking about the Montreal Alouettes, while I feel like a reliever in baseball. No, never mind. So basically, the Montreal Alouettes in this game proved at quarterback, Matthew Shiltz has been waiting for years to be the quarterback for the Montreal Alouettes. He has watched a battle. If you remember, Manziel came in, and then we saw the Argo that came in there, Pipkin, take over, but then he gets hurt. Adams takes over, and he's the big hit. Now Adams gets hurt, and Schultz finally gets his shot. And he did get his shot. In fact, he got a lot of shots downfield. This guy's a big play quarterback. And the big plays are assisted, as David said, Steinbach, and as I mentioned, the most yards rushing for him in his career, that helps the deep pass. And when David was talking about the confusion in the backfield for the Toronto Argonauts on defense, a lot of it was attributable to the fact that they had to concern themselves with Steinbach and his running ability. And therefore, you have a quarterback who has time, and give a pro quarterback time, and for the most part, they will be very successful. Yes, there's quarterbacks even with time that can't do anything. And yes, there's even quarterbacks who, sure, give them a lot of time, they can do something, but as soon as you start taking it away, they're not as good anymore. But the fact is, Matthew Shiltz proved that he knows how to throw the ball downfield and make passes. Now, obviously, with the Montreal Alouettes, they had themselves, obviously, they had a very good team, and they have BJ Cunningham is somebody that the team relies on, but he is not the guy anymore. At least not the guy that the team can rely on as much as they do now. And that guy is Eugene Lewis. This guy is amazing. All year he's been making the big plays. He reminds me of, he's basically a prototypical Canadian Football League receiver who we learn to we just learn to appreciate their work, because it doesn't matter what time it is in the game. It doesn't matter how early, it doesn't matter how late, it doesn't matter how small a moment, it doesn't matter how large a moment. He still makes the big plays. And why was that important? Their guy that was making the big plays, 3 passes, did not make the reception, Jake Weineke. So it's important to have more than one receiver that can do the job for you, because once it's established that a receiver is taken away, like the Argos did with Jake Weineke, Eugene Lewis came up big. This is a team, the Montreal Alouettes, that has a lot of tools. Their kicking game, their special teams, their defense. My goodness, I mean, this is a defense that smothered the Argo offense. They smothered the offensive line. They did everything they needed to do. You know, a former Argo, Chris Aki, was incredible. There's always the sacks. He had 2. And David Menard, it's a Canadian kid. Did you see him end rush? I mean, it was like there was nobody blocking him, and this is a good reason why David mentioned, and I agree 100%, that the offensive line for the Toronto Argonauts, without picking on them specifically or any individual specifically, as a group, they did not do well. And we've seen this in the Canadian Football League. We've seen it be repaired as well. And that's what the Argos are going to have to do. If remember last season, 2019, Michael, in BC, they needed an offensive line, and they turned it around. And that's what the Argos are going to have to do. If they don't do that, they're going to continue to have problems. So in that game, Montreal defeated Toronto handily, 37-16. Yep. I think the best play of the game that wasn't by the Alouettes was John Liu under pressure. Made the big play to save the interview by asking the player move closer to him and grab the handheld.
No, for sure. And thank you for that, Frank. And thank you for relieving me. You're relief pitcher.
Yeah, sure. So you want to conclude anything, add anything on the Montreal aspect of the game, because we want this to be all Argos.
No, I think if you're Montreal, you're. It's funny because we thought Montreal was going in a certain direction with Vernon Adams getting hurt. Earlier in the season, they fired the defensive line coach, and that unit ended up being the biggest part of that victory, in my opinion.
Yeah, so, change is good. It feeds our theory that in the CFL you can turn things around quickly if you make the right decisions.
Yeah, not only that, if you're Montreal, this was a perfect win for you because of where your team is in the standings. They saw the opportunity. They said, we know exactly how we can beat the Argos, because the Argos MO has been kind of the same all season. They start off slowly and they hope that the defense can keep them in the game enough that they can make a push at the end. Well, Montreal made sure that not only did they get off to a slow start and not get the lead, but that they weren't going to give them opportunity to get that lead back. So I think, Frank, you've been high on Montreal for a while, and I think you're starting to see, and the thing about a good team, and we've said this before, they can overcome injuries to key players. They just did it without their starting quarterback. It helped that their starting running back was back and healthy because he had missed some time. And Schultz, let's give him some credit. He made some big throws. And I think Montreal missed out. There were drops.
Yep.
That they
Weineke, he dropped a couple.
Especially
that were in his hands.
He had a touchdown that he dropped.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's well, let's go over to BC and Winnipeg. We only need a minute or two for this.
Can I
45 to nothing says it all, I think.
every
Every
measly
aspect of the game, they dominated.
um
After hearing Harris is gone for 6 games.
when I watched what the Blue Bombers did to BC, I think a lot of people maybe are asking this question: how did the Argos? How are they the ones that beat Winnipeg when you consider how
Absolutely.
like if Winnipeg really has a legitimate case to be undefeated this season if it weren't
Yeah.
for that one game.
I think another comment that can be made is that Toronto has had an impact on two of the best teams in the Canadian Football League. Winnipeg by beating them, and Montreal by losing to them. So the Argos have been the masters of other teams. I think that's enough about that game. I'm sorry, Winnipeg fans. I mean, I'm sure you can think of a million things to talk about as far as how
We
Winnipeg won that game, but
they're
I found that game to be
they're a boring
boring.
team now because they're just blowing everybody out. They
Exactly.
become boring. We don't want to talk about them.
On the opposite side of the ledger, not boring, is Saskatchewan trying not to lose their third game in a row to Calgary. Calgary looking unbeatable in the past few games, but Saskatchewan pulls off the win 20-17. Their quarterback needed to rebuild his confidence. He did. Duke Williams, Shaq and Duke Williams are in the fold. We'll see how that helps their team. But the most important thing that I think happened here is that the team's quarterback gained some confidence.
Yeah, and I think the team also tried their best to give their quarterback the best position to take advantage. 3 interceptions from Bo Levi Mitchell, that helps you're giving your offense free opportunities by getting back on the field and better field position. And if and this is something that they talked about during the game. Cody Fajardo has done really well when he's throwing between 0 to 20, but once you're looking for over 20, he struggled in that department. So I think maybe Saskatchewan's starting to realize what they need to do to help him play to his strengths, and their defense will help them too, because if their defense is keeping the other team off the scoreboard like they did in this one because of the turnovers, you're gonna give your quarterback the confidence that he needs, even if it was close. It wasn't like Saskatchewan blew them away. I feel like
No.
maybe they could have, based on the turnovers. Yes, Calgary was able to still get opportunities, but I think what you saw here was Fajardo saying, I'm not going to lose this game for the other
Yes.
team." I think that was the important thing for Cody in this one.
And as I discuss every week, and I've said it's becoming more and more important and clear that interceptions can determine the outcome. Bo Levi Mitchell pressed and threw 3 interceptions. This is something that if we were talking about the Bo Levi Mitchell before the 21 season, what we're looking at right now, you wouldn't recognize this as Bo Levi Mitchell. I mean, he has so many interceptions now on his side of the ledger. I'm afraid it probably outnumbers the amount of touchdowns he's thrown.
I
It
was
did
just
this
about
week.
to say 7 touchdowns, 13 interceptions.
Yep.
Usually, Bo Levi Mitchell, his career high is 14 interceptions in 18 games. Let's not forget he's only played 8.
Right.
This is very concerning in that regard. And usually, yeah, he could throw 13, 14 interceptions. That's because he's throwing 20, 25 to 35 touchdowns. Like, he's
Is he
outweighing.
possibly should he be looked at the way Fajardo, your definition of Fajardo now? Is he throwing too much?
It could be. He threw in this game. He threw 31 times, which isn't a lot. That's like the threshold where you want your quarterback to be throwing. We've said Kadeem Carey has been taking some pressure off him because of his running game, and they haven't been
That's
using
key.
that. And
Both teams, Saskatchewan and Edmonton, need that. They need a running game.
they do. And I think right now, we know that something's not right with Bo Levi Mitchell because this is not what we've become used to seeing. But because they need him so badly, he's going to feel like he needs to have these big performances. And I don't know. I think if you're Calgary right now, they were gaining that momentum at the right time, and they could easily lose it now because of a loss like this.
Well, football is, it's an ebb and flow game. It does tend to yield to momentum. Momentum in football is key. Not just on a game to game basis, but also on a play to play basis.
Yeah, no, you can the CFL. You can. I mean, even with Winnipeg, they're doing so right now. They can have things turn over on them very easily as well.
They sure can. Well, David, we have to go. Thanks again for this.
Thank you, Frank.
For David Morassutti, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing Mondays, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody.